This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good afternoon then. Welcome everybody and thanks for joining to this webinar that we have organized around the new Connecting Europe Facility Transport Call that was launched in September. I'm Salvador Furio, I'm the Director of Innovation and Port Cluster Development at Fundación Valencia Port and currently co-chair of the thematic group 2 of ALICE about corridors, hubs and synchromodality. Before I start with the session, I'd like to take the opportunity to share with you that we are starting a new period in ALICE in which we'll maintain these online activities and we will try to organize other punctual ALICE social events, sometimes associated to other events. For instance, in December with Polis in Gothenburg, or also in December, we have the plenary, which will be hybrid with a social event on the 15th. Currently, the leadership teams of the different thematic groups, the chairs and vice chairs, are working to define the new program initiatives for this period. We are also finalizing this process in the thematic group 2, and soon we will have a general session to share it with you. Anyway, one of the last activities of this year was the promotion of this Connecting Europe Facility program among the ALICE community. And as it was said in the communication of the webinar, the Connecting Europe Facility Transport Call supports the development and improvement of infrastructures. And also the modernization of infrastructures, and this includes also smart application for transport, technologies and innovation for transport interoperability, etc. Therefore, projects may involve not just infrastructure managers, but also other operators, transport operators, and other stakeholders like technological companies, etc. In many cases, the Connecting Europe Facility program can be also a good option, a good opportunity to implement the results of previous research and innovation actions on these areas that maybe could be funded under programs like Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe Now, etc. But anyway, I don't want to take more time as we have today with us Mr. Jensen Morten, Head of Unit at CINEA, the European Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, that will provide an overview of the Connecting Europe Facility Transport Call. After this, if you have a look to the program, we will have the participation of Somalis members with experience in the Connecting Europe Facility program that will share concrete opportunities and examples of potential projects. Before we start with Morten's presentation, just two practical aspects. First, as Fernando said, please write your questions in the chat during the presentations, and as we are not too many, we will ask you later to connect the camera and microphone to address the question directly to the speaker. And second, we will use the Slido to launch a couple of questions now to the audience and a couple more at the end of the webinar. So please follow the link and participate, as this will help us for this webinar and for future related actions. So I can give the floor to Jensen Morten. Or maybe we can wait and maybe Fernando, can you show directly the answers to this in order to see a bit what is the audience that we have at the moment?
Okay, sure. I can do that.
I guess 15 is the number of responses that we have to the question. Yes.
Correct. If you want, we can move to the, okay, now I see
Okay.
other people, but if not, we can
Well, in any
go
case,
to the
we
next
have
one.
digital platform, research and academia consultancies, shipping line, logistic service providers, and port terminal hubs between the audience. Okay. Yeah, maybe we can go to the next. So it seems 50-50, 50 of the participants have already previous experiences in self projects and the rest no. Okay, I think this gives us an overall picture of the audience that we have today. So we can give the floor to Jens and Morten. You can share your presentation. Okay, we can see it now.
You see the slides?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Then I'll try. So, well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation to give you an overview of the Connecting Europe facility and the CEF transport calls from 2021. It was interesting to see the Slido questions, because I knew that let's say you are partly or may partly be familiar with the Connecting Europe facility, but other organizations within ALICE are not or will not be so familiar with the Connecting Europe facility, which is perfectly normal, because as it was mentioned, the Connecting Europe facility is mainly focused on the implementation of infrastructure projects. So therefore, let's say some of you, so ports and other infrastructure managers are, let's say, typical clients of the Connecting Europe facility, whereas cargo owners, transport companies to a less extent are, let's say, potential beneficiaries of the Connecting Europe facility. So first, I'll give you an overview of the programs that are being managed by CINEA. So we are an executive agency, and we are managing programs on behalf of the European Commission. And the programs that we are managing are primarily contributing to the European Green Deal, but specifically in the Connecting Europe facility, we also have a part which is addressing the digital dimension. But otherwise, the other programs are mainly focused on supporting the European Green Deal. So we have the Connecting Europe facility for transport and energy, the renewable energy financing mechanism, which is a new program, the just transition mechanism with the public sector loan facility pillar is also a new program, not only for the agency but also at Commission level. Then Horizon Europe, which I believe most of you are familiar with, where we are managing the areas related to climate, energy, and mobility. Then we have the Innovation Fund, which is a new instrument which started last year and is, let's say, an instrument which is funded outside of the usual budget of the EU, and that program started last year. Then we have the LIFE program, which has been also existing for many years, and then the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. So these are the programs that are being managed by SINEA from the beginning of this year for this for this MFF, and we are to manage a budget of around 55 billion and will be around 500 staff members in 2027 to manage these 7 programs. When we look at CEF Transport, then there was the first Connecting Europe facility program ran from 2014 to 2020. And in transport, we have a portfolio of more than 1,000 actions or projects. And we had a budget of 23 billion euro, which has led to investments of more than 50 billion. So it's quite significant amounts that are put, are launched through calls for proposals, and also generating quite significant investments across the EU. And as you see from the pictures, I mean, we have classical infrastructure like bridges, railway lines, inland waterways. In rail, we are also supporting ERTMS, so the European Rail Traffic Management System, as one of the examples of digitalization. We also have supported in Northern Europe icebreakers, so that navigation can be ensured also in winter times in the north of the Baltic Sea. So it's primarily classical infrastructure like railway lines and so on, but there are also some variants of infrastructure that is being supported. When we are looking to the programming period from 2021 to 2027, then we have for transport a budget of 25.8 billion euro. The objective is, as I mentioned before, to support the European Green Deal and also the Commission Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy. And this we are doing by contributing to the TEN-T network, which has, let's say, a 2-layer approach. It has a core network, which are the main traffic, addressing the main traffic flows at European level, and then we have the comprehensive network, which is a finer network underlying the core network. And with the budget that has been set aside, then we will be contributing with 60% to the European Union's climate targets. In terms of the split of the budget, then there is the so-called general envelope, which is open to all EU member states, where we have a budget of 12.8 billion, of which 1.5 billion, however, is earmarked for cross-border projects in the cohesion countries. So that sort of limits the possibilities for certain member states to apply for that part of it. Then we have from the cohesion envelope 11.3 billion for funding of projects in the cohesion member states, and then a new feature in the Connecting Europe facility for 2021-27 is the military mobility envelope, and here the purpose is to support dual-use infrastructure that can support, let's say, civil and military mobility within the European Union. The way it is foreseen to be implemented is that there is a work program adopted by the European Commission in August this year for the next 3 years. So this is a novelty with the Connecting Europe facility, or CEF2 as we call it, namely that we have a work program for a 3-year period. So this is giving visibility to potential applicants about when they can potentially apply, and they can choose let's say the most suitable call for them within this 3-year period. The budget that is allocated to this part of the work program is 18.2 billion, so nearly 70% of the budget is foreseen to be distributed within the 3 years of this work program. The program works that there are 3 calls for proposal of each year of 5.5 billion, and then in addition to that there is a rolling call that has been opened together with a call on the 16th of September this year, with several cut-off dates until the end of 2023, and this is addressing the alternative fuel infrastructure facility. And this has a budget of 1.5 billion for the full period, so for the 3 years. And then there are 200 million for technical assistance actions, but this is actions aimed at member state to develop their administrative capacity, and other specific organizations. So this is not, let's say, open to everybody, so to say. In terms of how it is foreseen to allocate the budget to the different priorities, then the program is split in 2 parts. So there is the completion of the TEN-T network, which is the classical infrastructure projects of inland waterways and railways and ports and so on. And there, of the budget of the general envelope, 60% is foreseen to be allocated to this part of the work program, and then the other part, modernization of the existing TEN-T network, which in particular has the digitalization elements as part of it, has 40%. If you look to the cohesion envelope, then the distribution between these 2 main pillars of the program is different, where 85% of the budget is going to the completion of the TEN-T network, and this is because there still is a larger need in the cohesion countries to develop the basic infrastructure, so to say, the railways, the inland waterways, the ports, and so on, compared to let's say all in all member states, and consequently there is less budget left for the modernization of the TEN-T network. As I mentioned, there is a core network and there is a comprehensive network. The core network has to be completed by 2030, and these are, let's say, this is the high level network that are connecting that are connecting all the member states for the major traffic flows, and 85% of the budget are to be put into projects on the core network, and then 15% on the comprehensive network. And this is also because the budget that is available is very much focused on, let's say, filling let's say, addressing the European added value of the projects. Very often you will see that the projects, if you look at infrastructure investments, member states are looking into their country and focusing on inwards their investments, and that means that very often the cross-border sections are suffering from infrastructure investments, and this is where the Connecting Europe facility is trying to address especially those parts in order to complete and improve the cross-border sections between the member states. So in terms of the program and the calls that have been launched now on the 16th of September, it is, let's say, a rather complex set of calls. There are in fact, there are 13 calls published, where you see that 4 calls are addressing the completion of the TEN-T network, and then you have 8 calls that are addressing the modernization of the network, of which 2 of them are related to the alternative fuels infrastructure facility, which I will not be addressing further. And then there is the military mobility envelope, which is a call in itself also. But there are not only 13 calls, but within the calls there are a number of topics, as you will see here. You will see, if we look under the general envelope and projects on the core network, you will see that there are 8 topics, and the same under the cohesion envelope and so on. There are 19 topics in actions related to smart and interoperable mobility under the general envelope, but there is only 1 topic under the cohesion envelope there. So it is not, let's say, straightforward to navigate in within the calls, but I'll try to explain a bit further in my next slide. But before doing that, I will also look at the budget that is available, because you will see that if we look at the general envelope and we look at projects on the core network, you see that the indicative budget that is being made available there is 1.6 billion. And if you see below where we have the comprehensive network, the budget available there is 250 million. So it's quite a difference. And the 8 topics in the 2 calls are addressing the same areas. So in the general envelope core network, the 8 topics are it's rail, it's inland waterways, it's maritime ports, and it's rail and railroad terminals, and there you have 1 topic for studies, and then you have the same topic for works and mixed projects. So mixed projects are projects that are combining works and studies in the same application. So it's, let's say, a bit of a challenge to navigate at first glance to find the possibilities to submit applications. We have tried to, let's say, facilitate this on our website, where we have, let's say, identified all the topics that I mentioned, and there are in total 77 topics. And there, if you go on where there is a yellow circle on rail studies under the cohesion envelope. If you click there, then you will get directly into that call, and when you open the call, you will get the relevant information about the scope of the call, and what type of projects can be funded, and so on. But it takes a little bit of time to, let's say, to navigate. But I imagine that what can be of particular interest to you can be maritime ports, and it can also be railroad terminals, multimodal logistic platforms, and so on. And as I said, this is both open in the general envelope and in the cohesion envelope, and both on the core network and on the comprehensive network. But noting that there is, let's say, a limited budget available for the comprehensive network. So let's say it's projects are maybe smaller, but still the focus of the program is on the let's say on the core network, where the main traffic flows are concentrated, and this is why we are primarily addressing that. Then, in terms of the timeline, so calls were published on the 16th of September. The deadline for submission is the 19th of January at 5 o'clock. We will be evaluating proposals in spring, and the selection of the proposals will happen just before the summer, and we have to sign the grant agreements by the end of October next year. The way we are dealing with applications that are submitted to the call is that first of all, proposals that are being submitted, and they can only be submitted via the funding and tenders portal in electronic format. First, we check that they are admissible and eligible. One of the particularities of Connecting Europe facility projects is that they must be supported by a member state. So we are checking that indeed a member state has supported or agreed to the submission of the application, and if not, the proposal will not be admissible. Then we do an external evaluation where we are using external experts to assess the technical feasibility of the project, and we also, for works projects, in many cases need a CBA. I'll get back to that. After the external evaluation, there will be an internal evaluation led by DG Move with input from other Commission services like DG Regio, DG Environment, and DG Klima, and also CINEA is participating to that process. And the internal evaluation panel will draw up the final list of proposals that are recommended for financing. The proposals are evaluated against 5 award criteria. I will not go into the detail of the 5 award criteria, but of course the EU added value is an important element, and of course that the proposal fits within the scope of the work program. Maturity is extremely important. We expect, let's say, and we traditionally have always had a very high oversubscription, and now with the visibility of calls in the next 3 years, we will be even stricter on the maturity of the projects. So are they ready to start? And when we talk about ready to start, then we talk about starting in 21 or 22. And we also look at the, let's say, if they are realistically can be completed within the proposed time frame that they are foreseen to be implemented within. And then we of course also look at things like the financial availability. So is there also, I mean, in addition to the potential EU contribution, is the other financing also secured, and so on. So maturity is let's say, I would say more important than ever in the Connecting Europe facility. Quality, I think, speaks for itself, so I will not go into that. With regard to the impact, then we are looking at the impact on the environment, and this is something which is also we are looking at the CBA in the context of this award criteria, and we are also looking at the cross-border dimension and the effect on the TEN-T network as a whole. And the last criteria we are looking into is the catalytic effect. So let's say the added value of the financial support from the EU. So these are the award criteria that the external experts are looking into. If you consider to apply for funding under the Connecting Europe facility, I mean, first of all, read carefully the work program and the call text to find out if you actually have a project which fits within the scope of the program, and understand the way that the program is working, because it's not, let's say, the rules are not the same as in research, for instance. Here, in the majority of the projects that we are funding, have only one beneficiary, because the objective is to implement something. It's not, let's say, we are not funding research projects, and therefore the rules and the nature of the projects are quite different. As I mentioned before, the member states concerned need to give their agreement, so you need to see with the member state as early as possible. And then for those who are familiar with the program, you will see that there are, let's say, there's a new self-regulation and new rules, but you will also see that let's say in practice there are some differences. Applications are to submit it through the funding and tenders portal, as has been the case for Horizon, for instance, in the past. And there are also some changes in terminology and so on. But read indeed carefully, let's say, the work program and the call text, and understand also what kind of support you can get from the program. And also, if you prepare an application, make sure that it is clear and concise. And we always ask or invite applicants to ask somebody to read it who has not been involved in the drafting. I think this is, let's say, a good practice for any type of application. Deliverables and milestones. We also, for those who have been working in CEF1, there is a slight change. Before we only worked with milestones. Now we will be working both with deliverables and milestones, and we have a more continuous reporting than previously. Also to note that in this first call in 2021, costs can be eligible from the 1st of January this year. In the next calls, the cost will only be eligible from the time of submission of the application. And there are also in the call, there are indications of the expected duration of the projects, which is also, let's say, different from previously. There's also some specificities for works actions with regard to the EIA, and then the CBA. So for works projects, there is a requirement to submit a CBA. In some cases, it's either a full CBA or a simplified CBA. You will see this better in the overview here, where you will see for each of the topics if a CBA is required. And here we are talking about works actions. So you will see that if we take railways at the top, you need a full CBA unless unless the costs are below 10 million euro, then you can do a simplified CBA. In some areas there is no CBA required, as you see. Then briefly also on the budget requirements. So the Connecting Europe facility has different funding rates depending on, for studies it's 50%, normally it is 30% for works, but then for cross-border sections it can be increased to 50%, and this can again be increased by an additional 5% in case of an integrated management structure. So in case there is created a specific company to implement a cross-border project, then they can get 55%. In cohesion, it is 85%. So this makes the whole package a little bit complex, and therefore also the budget table in the application system is what I would say rather complicated and takes a little bit of time to understand. You will see that also land purchase is eligible under the cohesion call. Also works in outermost regions are eligible for a higher co-financing rate. But there I would immediately say that what is defined as outermost regions is very limited. So therefore, this is, for instance, what would that be? That would be Madeira and the Azores, for instance. That would be eligible for co-financing under the outermost regions. But this is information which is available. With regard to the budget, traditionally we have worked in let's say in a different format, and we expect that potential applicants will also work in this different format from the outset, where they define their budget based on on reporting periods and based on work packages, and therefore we have provided an Excel sheet which is allowing to build up the budget in what we consider a more traditional manner, and then it can be used to feed into the application system afterwards. I think I will stop here, and also I can see I'm running a little bit late, so I hope it was useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Morten. Thanks for the presentation. I think we have some questions. Maybe, as we said before, maybe you can, there's one question from Andrea Condotta. Maybe you can directly switch on the microphone and the camera and ask directly.
I'm trying to actually, but
yeah, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
You cannot see me, but at least you can hear me. So well, my question was related to the topic of hydrogen. As far as I understood, it has been included in the blending call, so it's not in the general one, and that's not fully clear to me, which is the rationale on the decision, since as a new fuel, it should need of a higher percentage of grant. I mean, I can understand perfectly that investments on LNG right now are not new, let's say. So it's perfectly understandable to me that the percentage can be 30%. But for hydrogen, the market is in a very different stage. And always on this topic, it's even more unclear to me why the vehicles that can support the market have not been included in the call, as it was, for example, in the previous ones.
Yes, I mean, I can give you a partial reply only because I'm not familiar with the details of the alternative fuels infrastructure facility, which is the, let's say, the new blending facility. So first of all, to a large extent, they are in the alternative fuels infrastructure facility working with unit contribution also to facilitate the administrative burden or reduce the administrative burden, because many of the potential applicants are, let's say, also not familiar with the program and are not, let's say, regular clients of the program. But first of all, we have to keep in mind that the Connecting Europe facility is there to support the implementation. So therefore, it is things that are, let's say, close to the market. So research and development is not funded by the Connecting Europe facility. So this is some of the reasons. I think I mean, there are different funding available, whether it is let's say electric charging or whether it's hydrogen and so on. So there is also taking into account the let's say the cost related to and the development or the rollout of these things. But again, I'm not familiar with the details of it. But indeed, all of it is all alternative fuels are to be funded under the alternative fuels infrastructure facility.
Okay, thank you. We have also one question from Nicolas Brunet. Are you going to connect and ask directly, or maybe I can? read it. If not, the question was, where can we find all the details regarding the co-funding rates? Are they, they are not to be found anywhere in the call documents?
Well, the co-financing rates are in the work program. I don't remember if they are also in the call text, but they are available in one or the other of those two documents.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think maybe it's also worth to mention in which I didn't do on the budget table, that in the Connecting Europe facility, indirect costs are not supported. So which is also a difference from many other programs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there are no more questions on the chat. I don't know if is there someone that want to address a question to Mr. Morten?
In the meantime, I can mention also, Salvador, that on last Thursday, on the 14th of October, there was a specific info day for the alternative fuels facility, and there was also an info day for the other calls on the 27th of September, and the presentations, which are more detailed than what I have given here, are available from the website, and they're also let's say the presentations are also recorded, so the information can be found there, or more information can be found there as well.
Okay. I do have a question as well that, well, in fact, a colleague from here from Fundación Valencia Port that couldn't join today asked me to address to you, and is related to the budget and the number of partners in a project proposal. So the thing is, and it's about a project related to studies. And if a project of about 35 million euros budget with around 30 partners, is this something that can perfectly fit in the call, or it could be considered too difficult to manage because of the number of partners and so not very high rated? Or
well, I mean, we wouldn't look at it that way. I would say that, as I mentioned, typically there is only one beneficiary in the majority of the projects, but we also have projects with 30 participants, for instance. The important thing is, of course, that they all have let's say, a significant role to play in the project. So, and this is maybe where there is a difference compared to research projects, which are also has let's say, an objective of collaborative nature, and this is not, let's say, here we are focused on implementation, so therefore we would probably see it a bit as let's say, ask the question: is it necessary with so many different beneficiaries involved to actually implement the action? Because of course, the more beneficiaries that are involved, the more difficult the coordination of the action is. But it's from that perspective whether it is, let's say, the most efficient way to implement the action. So, but if that is to have 30 partners, then well, then there is not a problem as such. And the size of budget is also not let's say, that's not the question really. I mean, we have projects where the co-financing is 700-800 million euro. It's only a few projects of that size, obviously, but we have projects of all sizes. So that's not an issue. Of course, if you saw the budget for some of the calls, and of course, if you come with a proposal that will absorb half of the available budget, then yeah, that's then it should be because it's a rollout of something in a number of member states, which is, let's say, proportionate to that. But otherwise, the budget is not a problem as such.
Okay, clear enough. Thank you, Morten.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, maybe a bit of a technicality, but I take the chance to address this question directly to you. It relates to the table with the detailed budget breakdown that you've shown earlier. I would like to know whether, because most of the times the studies, the beneficiary assign the study to external suppliers, because it's design activities that most of the times they don't have the expertise within themselves to do. So do the costs relating to the studies go under the study cell or the subcontracting costs in that case? Because in the earlier period, it was an external cost. It was defined as an external cost. But what is now?
I'll give you a reply with a small reservation. But if it is an application for a study only, if the application relates to studies only and it's a study application, so submitted under a study topic, then it can be placed on the studies. But if it is a mixed action, so works and studies in the same action, then it should go under subcontracting, if I remember correctly. But there is indeed some guidance on that, because this is where it gets a little bit ambiguous, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I had also the question about whether there is a guideline on eligible costs as for the previous programming period.
Well, what do we mean in terms of eligibility of costs? Which type of costs?
In 2018, there was a publication titled Guidelines on the Eligibility of Costs under the Connecting Europe Facility from the European Commission. So I don't know if that is still to be taken into account, or if there will be a new one.
No, that will be the same, more or less. I cannot immediately think of any differences in terms of the eligibility of the cost, because, as I mentioned before, indirect costs were also not eligible under the previous reporting period. So in terms of eligibility of cost, it's the same.
It's the same. Okay, thank you.
On the budget table, which I showed to you, if you go to the presentations that were given on the info day on the 27th of September, you will find a much more detailed explanation about the budget table on there.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Morten. Thanks again for the presentation and the answers to the different questions. I think we can move forward with the next presentations, as we have some members of ALICE with experience in this program that are going to present concrete opportunities for ALICE stakeholder groups. So the first presentation is the one of Alexio Pico, Managing Director at Circle. So please, Alexio. Hello.
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
First of all, I mean, just A question came into my mind for Morten. Sorry, Morten, to come back to you, because yesterday I was quickly looking the place to place a question, the FAQ section, and I was a little bit. I mean, I was going quickly there, but I was a little bit in trouble to find the place, in the sense that for each and every call there should be, it seems, a specific FAQ section, but I didn't find the place where to place the question itself. And then I wasn't sure to place it in the general FAQ of the participant portal, and then I sent an email to the CINEA to the CINEA email address. But is there some guideline on that, Morten? Sorry for that, for this last question.
Well, on the funding and tenders portal, when you go into the specific call, you will see FAQs published in relation to that specific call. And if you have a question to the call, then there is a functional mailbox also from the participant portal where you can submit your question.
Okay, I will go through, because it's not immediately for sure, but okay, I will go through again.
In principle, it should be like for instance for Horizon, which I for submitting questions. So
yeah, I see. So that means the general place in which you could put, and you can refer to set T, okay, to set transport, but it's the general. It's the general. Yeah, that's what I thought. But I mean, okay, I'm going to do it again. Okay, no problem. Thanks for that.
Thanks. And Alexio, since I got the microphone again, I would just like to say that I will leave you here, and I hope it was useful, and thank you from my side.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Morten. So thanks a lot to Alice and to Fernando for this opportunity. My idea is to briefly present you some of the priorities that are included in the big picture that was presented by Morten. And I see that it's interesting that I see CINEA did an exercise to place in the table and link in the different priorities and documents. Just 2 weeks ago, when I did it for myself, because the first time it was a little bit of a mess also for me, I did exactly the same table, and I think my colleagues did the same in order to to find our place. Nevertheless, what I'm going to present, there are 3 different priorities in which there is, let's say, a room for something related to IT. You know that we have a specific experience in CEF, in other programs, in let's say in consultancy projects, in things that and topics that are not IT related, but at least half of the projects we do, they are IT related, because Circle Group, the main business in terms of proportion is IT for port, transport and logistics. So we do a number of projects. Just to give an example here, in the digitalization course, in the sub-digitalization course some years ago, we had 4 projects there. So let me go quickly through it. I like to start with this, because just to remind that everything we do in terms of also in the explaining and describing our project and application is also related to the expansion of the 10T network. This is still the old 10T core network corridors related to the previous regulation. The new one, I received it right yesterday. It's of course a little bit different. For instance, it does not include for sure UK, but it's also extending a number of corridors. But it was good to start reminding that everything we do in CEF is in order to complete and to develop the Trans-European Network for Transport in the different layers, the core network corridors, the first one, the core network, and the comprehensive network. So the 3 places the 3 priorities, sorry, because, okay, the 3 priorities I'm going to talk about, they are first, Motorway of the Sea. Motorway of the Sea is something that is, quite familiar for me, also because Circle is the leading consultant for the European coordinator for Motorway of the Sea right now since 5 years. So we are in our 2nd mandate. So we have been working with Brian Simpson before, and now with Professor Kulborevic. And Brian, the Motorway of the Sea is the maritime dimension of the 10T. And it is a very strange animal, let's say, comparing to other priorities. And there are two different types of projects in Motorway of the Sea, very different one from each other, and with different, let's say, features, characteristics, constraints also, I may say. The first one is the so-called Motorway of the Sea Link project, in which the proposal to be submitted should be about the upgrading port infrastructure, interland connection, or specific terminals in specific ports, but where you have a connection between two ports. And these two ports should be in two different member states, and they should be two core ports, or at least one core and one comprehensive. And everything you do, it should be related to the establishment of a new short sea shipping link, maritime route, or to expand an existing one. Strangely enough, in one of the many, strange situations we see in this call, the support is given to ports, but not to the shipping line in between. But this is what it is. The second part of the Motorway of the Sea is, in a way, not much more interesting. It's more interesting, at least for me. They are the so-called wider benefit projects. This is a category of projects that are quite well defined, because they are mentioned in Article 21 of the existing current 2013-15 regulation, and they are actions that are, let's say, not strictly related to two ports, but they are related to a wider European benefit, meaning they are about a number of specific arguments, and they should be developed by ports and other actors that are supporting this specific argument. They are not. This is not mandatory. They are linked together. So we have a number of experience, a number of projects in the past. I can mention a number of projects also in which our colleagues in Valencia were leading on, participating together with us. I would state B2MOS, MOS for MOS, wider MOS. Many of those projects were wider benefit projects. We have still wider benefit projects running from the last call. For instance, we are leading one together again with our friends in Valencia called Iron, that is called Ealing, that is a wider benefit project. This year, and for the next two, in the Motorway of the Sea, the wider benefit projects that could be submitted are about ICT, that is general enough to do many things, and also icebreaking and or activities ensuring year-round navigability. That is also a little bit strange, but because as you understand quite well, it is not really concerning all the European member states, but it is like that. In principle, what I'm going to give you some examples later on is more related, of course, to ICT. In this case, as I told you, maritime vessels will not be supported except for icebreaking facilities, where there is a clear need of renewing the icebreaking fleet. The second priority I would talk about is railroad terminals and multimodal logistic platforms. These are all, let me say, the nodes in which there is at least two transport modes connected. I'm talking about freight, of course. At least two transport modes connected, and with a specific focus on rail, in which a number of activities are eligible under this call. In principle, we have some activities that are related to infrastructure, such as improving the road connection to maritime and inland ports and railroad terminals. But these are even for road connection, they are eligible only if it is not an increase of capacity, but only if this action is addressing a real, significant, clear, and understandable bottleneck. The other one is the construction or upgrade of multimodal railroad terminals, combined transport transshipment points, and other accessible multimodal logistic platforms located on the TEN-T network. So located on the TEN-T network, including connecting or siding tracks, adaptation for longer trains. So this is the infrastructure part. Safe and secure track waiting areas, again, infrastructure part. Power connection in case, of course, you want to give some power to electric propelled vehicles or equipment. Clean transshipment equipment for intermodal loading units. For instance, the example of the crane you see in the picture that could be transformed or procured an electric one instead of the diesel one that are still operating in many terminals. And then again, quite interesting on a certain level, ICT equipment and applications, including automation. So everything that is improving the handling capabilities of a terminal, everything that is including the digital interoperability of the terminal with other actors of the supply chain, and also automation, such as the gate automation that is quite typical for a terminal. The third one, the third category is the so-called smart application that includes a number of different sub priorities, let's say. Some of them are related to the river, in which there is the eligibility for action supporting river information services, or so-called single window inland port community system. That is a little bit of a strange animal again. There is the support that is more, it's not explicitly mentioned for member states, but in principle it should, for the implementation of the European Maritime Single Window environment. That is something that is still not, for me, something that could be suitable for works, because the European Maritime Single Window environment is not still in place, so it could be more on the study level. And the same for a point that I don't see. Yes, for the fourth point here, that where the member states are, let's say, clearly identified, that is the development and implementation of IT platform in accordance with the eFTI regulation. That is mainly study at this time, because the eFTI regulation will be in place in 2024, 2025, after the Commission will deliver the delegated and delegated implementing acts. In this respect, I would say that there should be interest to do some study or even a first prototype later in 2023 and 24 with an action, and we are quite much interested in supporting that, because currently we are also leading a consultancy with the Commission as a leading consultant for the eFTI implementation. And for all those things, in a way or the other, might be interesting for ALICE members, but also the last one specifically, because it's talking about enabling interoperability through digitalization of processes and collaborative logistics. That, of course, this is something in which, okay, I have not to tell you, because you are in ALICE, so you know perfectly what ALICE is doing. So this is perfectly fitting with the work, the roadmap, and the activities that ALICE is doing. Some examples of projects, applications that could be there, and those things we are thinking to. We are already working with some actors to do specific projects on those. So if there are interest in that, you can always through Fernando or directly send me an email to ask information about it. One is IT systems to fulfill international conventions, and to test, additionally, I would say, to test an eFTI platform prototype together with the fulfillment of international convention. I mentioned the ECMR for road, but I could, of course, mention the ECIM for rail, or the electronic bill of lading for maritime or air. eFTI platform prototypes 2024, yes, because the 2023 we will have the technical and functional specifications available as implementing act from the Commission. So that means that 2024 we could have an FT platform prototype. Application of artificial intelligence, blockchain of the supply chain, or other mature technologies that could be more largely, not massively, largely implemented on the supply chain, such as also optimization or tracking and optimization, or further development of tracking and tracing facilities across the supply chain. In the same logic, extension of port community systems towards the hinterland. What we in the past they were called corridor management platforms, or they can be called differently, but the logic is in a way, it could be the extension of port community system towards the internet, or could be a platform that is managed through a collaborative logistics from the shipper to the final destination. And of course, digitalization and automation, as discussed in the slide before, in port and inland terminals. That means what I previously introduced in the slide before. The co-funding rates that have been mentioned by Morten also, studies are 50, to take it a little bit simpler and not, differentiating between cohesion and not cohesion. Let's say the general envelopes cohesion are a few countries, so let's stay on the broader level. Studies are 50% and works 30%. We have cross-border links, and MOS is considered cross-border, and that means that it will be funded 50%. And also the smart applications that are under the innovation priority are funded 50%. And 70%, as mentioned by Morten, for outermost region. That is true that are not so many in Europe. I think there is a bit more than Azores and Madeira, but of course there is a specific funding rate for them. So this is, I think it was my 10 minutes, and the rationale is there are IT possibilities in CEF. We are working on a number of them, and of course we are available to discuss further with anyone that could be interested in. Thank you very much, and of course I'm available for questions.
Thanks a lot, Alexio, for sharing these opportunities related to IT projects. And maybe we can go directly to the next presentation, and we can have the questions after the 3 presentations. So Giuseppe Siciliano from PTS class, he's going to share opportunities related to ports, hubs, and terminals infrastructures. Please, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me well. It's very nice to have the opportunity to present our experiences, since this program is indeed one that brings a lot of added value to the table for both the beneficiaries and the European Commission. Let me first spend just a few words of introduction on ourselves. PTS Class is a consulting group based in Italy. Our core business is providing both private companies and public administrations in the transport field with services ranging from strategic advisory to economic assessments, including cost-benefit analysis, and the support to project promoters in achieving and managing public funding, especially in the framework of EU programs, which brings us to the topic of this presentation. So the objective of these very few slides is not to bring further info on the CEF calls, which was already mentioned by the previous speakers. Of course, we are available for further details after the meeting. But the objective is to show a couple of successful past experiences in the CEF program. It could be useful for this audience because of the type of initiative and priorities that they have addressed. Please, Fernando, you can go to the next slide. So the first case is the project called EV Stations 2.0 by IP, Italiana Petroli, one of the biggest oil companies in Italy, which, like many oil companies, has been planning to differentiate their business and embrace, let's say, the need for alternative fuels. They had this project of enriching their service stations with the offering of charging points for electric vehicles, and an opportunity to achieve funding for this project came within the CEF program, and in particular with what was at the time called CEF blending instrument. Now, with all the novelty and freshness that came with the 2021-2027 programming period, this instrument has a new name, but we will see that later. A funding instrument which was meant to blend, in fact, public and private funding, and as such, in order to receive the CEF grant, it also required the activation of a loan from a financial institution. therefore entailing the need for the project to be positively assessed within the due diligence process from the bank itself. In this case, it was the European Investment Bank. This also included carrying out a cost-benefit analysis aimed at comparing the financial convenience and the socio-economic convenience of the project. And it is worth noting, Jens and Morten already did, that in general in the CEF program, also in the new programming period, cost-benefit analysis are indeed part of what is required in the application of the proposal, especially for the implementation of projects that have costs higher than 10 million euro. So we helped IB to define the perimeter of this project proposal in order to make it consistent with the priorities of the call. And in the end, the proposal consisted of 24 million action aimed at the provision of charging points in 45 service stations along the 10T corridors, implying both the actual construction works and the realization of the related digital platform, which was aimed at managing the charging points and to make them usable in a non-discriminatory way by all the mobility service providers and ultimately all the final users. The second case, can you please go on, Fernando? Thank you. Is one that is located in Eastern Europe, namely on the Black Sea in the Bulgarian port of Burgas. It was a case of a CEF action proposed by two beneficiaries that were BMF, a terminal operator in the port of Burgas, which is located in the Orient East Med corridor, and the NRIC, which is the Bulgarian Railway Infrastructure Manager. The action was a so-called study-only action, in that it only included the design phases of the overall project pipeline. The project included a number of interventions in the port aimed at improving the effectiveness of the concerned terminals and the possibilities of a modal shift in the inland section of the transport flows passing from the port itself to rail, of course. The action was structured in three activities that were the final and detailed design for each of the two involved terminals and the final and detailed design of the last mile rail infrastructure. This action achieved the funding of 85% of the eligible cost. That was because of its location, because Bulgaria is part of the so-called cohesion envelope of the CEF program, which envisages higher funding rates. And it obtained 2.3 million euro out of the total 2.7 million euro of eligible costs for the design phases. Like I said, it is worth mentioning in this respect that it is very helpful for the sake of the project to have the possibility to apply for the design phases already, because if the design phase is co-funded by the European Union, then this obviously gives more strength to the application of a possible follow-up that includes the actual realization of the works. Now I will leave the floor to my colleague, Francesco Barontini, for the final part of the presentation.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Hello to everybody. The idea of this last slide is to present to you potential financing lines, financing topics for projects like the one that Giuseppe described now under the CEF2 call for proposal. What we decided to do is to present to you projects promoted by private operator. Okay, so CEF, even if it is financing infrastructure for public use, is also open to private operator. And I'm not going to say something that you have already heard, but there is still space for getting finance for alternative fuel infrastructure projects, as the one that Giuseppe described before, under the alternative fuel infrastructure facility, which confirms the blending approach. So you need to involve an implementing partner that is a financial institution. As we have seen, the European Investment Bank is one of the main implementing partners for Europe, but other implementing partners are the National Promotional Bank, but also private banks, private commercial banks. And as you can see, Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Facility is financing charging infrastructure for electric vehicles on the road network, but also on dedicated to other transport modes under the zero emission topics, which finances charging infrastructure in maritime ports, on the airports, but also dedicated to public transport services, and which finances the hydrogen refueling stations for heavy-duty vehicles, but also for other transport means. The Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Facility will be dedicated also to finance LNG bunkering infrastructure for maritime transport. On the right side of the slide, you can see potential follow-up for projects under the maritime, for projects located on maritime ports. And we have a huge budget for projects located inside terminals, inside ports, and this huge budget is mainly on two budget lines: projects on the core network and projects on the comprehensive network. This funding line will be dedicated to finance projects for the improvement of the maritime accessibility to the ports, for the improvement of the basic infrastructures for the port, with certain conditions related to the implementation of low emissions multimodal solution, shoreside electricity supply, intermodal solutions. So the idea is to stress that even if you are a private operator, you can get funds also in CEF2 by implementing projects that are useful for public use. And this was the case of the projects that were presented by Giuseppe a few minutes ago. So thank you for your time, and I leave the floor to Carlo Vaghi.
Thank you, Francesco. I kindly ask to switch to my presentation. If not, I can share my screen. What do you prefer, Fernando?
Okay. I'm making you presenter, so then you can share directly your screen.
It's better since I have some animation. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think you can see my screen. I'm Carlo Vaghi, scientific advisor of FIT Consulting, a consulting company based in Rome that has a significant, although recent track of record in assisting private and public entities in CEF transport call, the project preparation and management, as well as CBA. Well, CEF is like a volcano. It can bubble for years, but once the coal pops up, then there are many possibilities, and one is hard to manage them all. Of course, as Francesco said, there are many possibilities for private companies and specifically for logistics service provider too. I give you an example on safe and secure truck parking areas. That is something funded by CEF, of which my colleagues have not talked yet. Safe and secure truck parking area, what does it mean? It means areas, parkings where drivers can rest, can be safe, park their truck within fences, with the possibility to have a restaurant, an hotel, a bed, a shower, etc. And last but not least, electric charging facilities if they run a refrigerated vehicle. Pass4 Core, what is Pass4 Core? Is one of the main projects on SSTPA funded in 2020 by CEF 2019 call. The lead beneficiary is Consortio ZAI Verona. This is the famous Verona Freight Village. The grant is 5.5 million euro. Fit Consulting assisted the lead in the proposal preparation. What is the goal? The goal is to bring funds to many partners, and this wasn't happening at the time, for more than 900 safe and secure parking lots around Italian nodes, 11 actually logistic nodes, motorways, airports, and private logistic companies, because some of those 900 parking lots are near private logistic facilities along 410 core network corridor. Pass4 Core, let us be proud to say it, paved the way towards implementing SSTPA also outside motorways. Because the previous program said that those parking had to be near motorways, whilst now the CEF2 call tells us that SSTPA can be also in 10T core network nodes, but also in comprehensive, as we will see in minutes. The partnership of Pass4 Core that is started in 2021, the Italian Ministry of Transport, 2 motorways concessionaires, 5 railroad terminals, what we call in Italy interporti or freight villages, 1 core airport, and 3 logistics service providers. So to respond to a key question that posed Fernando while talking with me, engaging me to this workshop, why logistics service provider have to be interested, could be interested in safe and secure truck parking areas? Well, there are 3 in Pass4 Core that have a parking facility, that wanted to upgrade owned parking facility and organize them as parkings open to the public. That means open to the public, becoming a facility that generates revenues for the owner. Of course, logistics service provider want to provide, or may willing to provide safe and secure waiting areas for their customers, and or they may want to endow owned parking with facilities for safe and secure rest for drivers. In other words, they want that their clients stay safe and secure while waiting for the opening of the warehouses gates. On top, let's remind ourselves that SSTPA call asks that applicants are aware that they apply to achieve the EU standard for safe and secure truck parking areas. Please click on this link to know more about what bronze, silver, gold, and platinum standard mean. Opportunities from CEF2. As we said before, CEF2 call on safe and secure mobility, and this is the code, funds as STPA on motorways and nodes of the 10-tier core network, but also comprehensive if they serve the users on the road core network. They SEF funds works and not studies. It means that design should be completed and EIA consent have to be achieved already if you want to apply for parkings. Eligible actions are this list officially taken from the code, so development of new safe and secure area, upgrading and optimizing existing parkings. Works are funded 50%, so above the normal rates, let me call it this way, of SEF that is 30, but works on new cohesion area can be up to 85%. Eligibility of cost is from 2021 and the minimum funding is 1 million euro. What can be funded? Let me just give an unofficial sketch of what can be funded and not according to the code, the FAQ, past project, and let me call it this way, under brackets, the practice. Parking lots and areas are eligible. If you have payments, signaling, fences, gates, go on. If you have a mature project, if you have completed the design and achieved the EIA if needed. Electric charging may be eligible, but not in this call. You must apply to a AFIF call, as my colleague said. Unfortunately, it is the way, at least for this call. Lights are funded. Wi-Fi internet connections are funded. Vending machine, but not restaurants, are funded. Laundry facilities, toilets, showers, and every facility of this kind are funded. Of course, hotels and any other facility that requires construction of hardware buildings are not funded as common in SEF that, by the way, doesn't fund warehouses. I hope to have stayed in the slot that Fernando kindly gave to me. Thank you all. If you want, you can drop me an email and you can join us on the social network. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot, Carlo. Thanks a lot to all the speakers, Alexio, Giuseppe, Francesco. We are out of time. We can raise one question from Andrea Condotta. Maybe if you can address it quickly, maybe Giuseppe, Francesco, or Carlo can answer it if they can.
Yes, if you are talking about the land, Andrea, then yes, you need to be the owner. You need to already own the land where to implement the project.
Let me add something to what Giuseppe currently says. You have to be the owner or the rental contract, but you have to demonstrate that up to the date that you submit the proposal, you have the area at disposal. You cannot promise to purchase it. Well, here and there are cases where proposals are funded with a letter of commitment between the current owner and the applicant, but is not the common case. Am I correct, Giuseppe?
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot again. There are no more questions on the chat, but I'm sure there will be questions. So please, if there are questions, I think you can address them directly to the speakers. Some of them share directly their email in the chat. If not, you can also send it to me or to Fernando, and we will send them to them so that you can have the answer. And I think we can close here. We have a couple of additional questions on Slido. Please, if you can, please join the link and answer them. This will be useful for us. And I hope you find interesting the session. And we'll leave this link some minutes so that you can answer, and we will close the session after, just to try to keep with the time. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.